another temptation comes for Paul and Barnabas. They go from one side, running away from those who want to stone them for preaching something other than what the people in the synagogue say should be preached, to the other side of the ditch, where now they're considered gods by those who are pagan. It's so wonderful to see you tonight. I'm Pastor John, and it is time for the call to prayer. Last week we discovered that mission is the way out of vendetta. Victory only comes from mission. And Paul and Barnabas were on this mission, and they started to move on further. They headed from Lystra on to Derbe. And as you know, in Lystra, there was this man that was healed. We talked about it last week, this man that had been from a young child not able to walk, never was able to walk, and he was able to walk by faith in Jesus. Remember, it didn't come from Paul, it came from Jesus. Paul was only the conduit or the straw to be able to bring the grace of God to this man. And so all these people were so happy that he had been healed, and the crowd came to see what Paul had done. They shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down in human form." Now, Paul, of course, and also Barnabas could not speak the Lycaonian language. Paul could speak Greek, as could also Barnabas. But the Lycaonian language was local to that area. See, this is the ancient world. In the ancient world, there would be one town to the next, and each town had its own dialect, its own language. Rome came along and kind of organized it so it could all be Latin. Alexander the Great years before had done that with Greek, but through time, languages change. And in this Lycaonian language, they were saying the gods came down from heaven. And Paul and Barnabas had no idea that they were saying this. And so, Barnabas, they called Zeus. You can tell Barnabas must have had a beard, right? That's why oftentimes all of them probably had beard, but especially Barnabas must have had one of those big beards, kind of like Zeus. They said, that guy must be Zeus. And this other guy's Hermes. Hermes, of course, was the one that spoke. It says that in the Bible. They called Paul, since he was the one speaking, Hermes. And they had come down to human form, right? And then the priests of Zeus, whose temple they had just outside the city, brought a bunch of bulls and wreaths to the city gates because the crowd wanted to sacrifice to them. Wow. So Paul and Barnabas got amazing success bringing people to Jesus. So much so that the Jewish leaders of the synagogue got angry in the last towns, and they wanted to stone him. So then, what Paul and Barnabas do is they get to Derbe. A miracle happens. They're able to produce a miracle through the grace of God. And now the people in their own language say, wait a minute, these guys are gods. Paul and Barnabas have no idea what they're saying. They're cheering and everything, and he's all happy. And then Paul begins to see that they're going to sacrifice an animal to them. And this is where Paul goes, whoa, 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 wait a minute. So, by the way, before we get into what Paul says, we as human beings have a temptation to fall into the other ditch. We pastors, we leaders, those who know God have a temptation to fall into the other ditch. Sometimes we find ourselves in trouble in our own church because our own leaders sometimes are jealous, and sometimes they get angry for whatever reason. Then what happens is when God uses us outside in the world, then on the other hand, others want to give us acclaim. Right? Others of them want to make us the center. I go back to now the original sin that Lucifer had. Remember Lucifer in heaven before he was renamed to Satan? The reason why he fell, he said, you said in your heart, it says in the scriptures, I shall be like the Most High. I shall be like God. I. It's all about me, and that's a big temptation, that ditch we can all fall into. When we come to know Jesus and our lives get better, then what happens is sometimes we forget that original love. We sometimes move toward the I. If the religion doesn't give me what I want, if I don't get the money I want, the feelings I want, joy doesn't always come to us unless we're connected with Him. But sometimes we think we should be the joy center. Sometimes we think we should be the center of attention. We think that we're so important, and we are, that Jesus died for us. But you know what? If we see ourselves as the most important, then it's very impossible. It's very, very impossible. Does that work? Yeah. It's extremely impossible for us to then find that joy again, because Jesus isn't center anymore. It's what we want. I need to be in charge. I need what I want. Paul and Barnabas immediately realized this. They're being heralded as gods. They could have lived there for a season with anything they wanted, huh? But instead, they go, wait a minute, stop, hold your horses. He's not Zeus, and I'm definitely not Hermes. In fact, there are no gods but God, Jesus Christ. He, in fact, says here, which of course was, Zeus was the one that was believed that brought the rain and brought the things so that there would be growth on the land. And what Paul says here in Acts chapter 14, verse 12, Barnabas, they called Zeus, and Paul, they called Hermes because he was the chief spokesman. The priests brought all of the animals of sacrifice. Verse 14, but when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of this, they ripped their clothes and rushed into the crowd shouting, friends, why are you doing this thing? We're only human like you. We bring you good news, telling you that these worthless things are not the living God. These creations of men, these artifacts that people have, they're not gods. They're only items that are made by human hands. It is God who made the heavens and the earth, and He put the rain on them, and He manifests Himself. He manifests Himself. He has shown kindness to all of you by being rain from the heavens and the crops and the seasons. He provides you with plenty of food so that your hearts will be filled with joy. Even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. I'm reminded of so many movies I've seen where someone does a great thing and the natives start to sacrifice to the to the one that does this great thing. You know, it reminds me of Return of the Jedi, where C2P, if you know any Star Wars, C2P is being they're sacrificing the other friends of C2P to him. And C2P is golden, he's a golden creature, and these little Ewoks. It's kind of like the same thing. Paul and Barnabas are saying, wait, stop. And these guys still wanted to sacrifice to them. Then, here we go. Here's where it gets complicated. Then some Jews from the synagogue that didn't like Paul, right? Didn't like the teaching. Now the left and the right are going to come together. This is how it always works with Jesus. The left and the right always come together. The ones that are on one side, the religious side of biblical religion, and those that are on the religious side of non-biblical religion, or those who are political, on left and right, both come smashing in on Paul. They came from Antioch and Iconium and had won the crowd over. They began to stone Paul and drag them outside the city gates, thinking that he was dead. Wow, so talk about emotion. A healing happens. Great events occur. People start cheering and Paul is happy, and he's thinking that maybe God would become evident through this event. And then he finds out that these people started sacrificing to him. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then as these people are kind of stunned, they're like, you're not a God? All of a sudden the Jewish people come in and say, no, he's not a God. In fact, he is going to turn people to the devil. And so then they come in stoning him. And then the people, it's like this mass hysteria that occurs. Eventually following through with Paul being thrown outside the city gates, stoned almost to death. Wow. But at least Paul didn't fall in the other ditch. He could have been in charge of that city for a while until they found out he wasn't a god, right? Now with us, we, sometimes in our lives, want things to be about ourselves. We need to make it about God. But when that happens, I promise you one thing. I promise you one thing. When that happens, you will not be liked by the right or the left, but you will be loved by Jesus. He promised us that if you follow me, you will carry a cross. But it will not be in vain, for that cross is easy and that burden is light when you have Jesus on your side. My friends, have Jesus on your side. We're going to discover what happened to Paul afterwards. It didn't kill him for sure. And Paul didn't stop, for he is the Indiana Jones of the New Testament church. You didn't stop Paul. You may stop Barnabas, you may stop John Mark, but you never stop Paul. The first missionary journey is about to come to completion. But great things started to occur, even if no one sees it. In the next few minutes, we're going to be having our... It's 7:15. It's right now. So we're going to be having our intercession. So I hope you'll be with us for intercession so we can pray for each and every one. If you're enjoying these, please make sure to smash the like button, share this, subscribe to the channel. Like and subscribe. And remember, without you, mission cannot happen. Be a part. Even if life becomes difficult, stand up, for true joy, it comes through worshiping He who lives for eternity and for you. May God bless you, and see you in the next few minutes.